Happy NTI Day 31. We're going to be finding angle measures using Trig today. We're going to start in the App Store because I have found a pretty good free graphing calculator app. I just typed in graphing calculator TI-84 and I'm going to be using this one. If you would like to download the same app and follow along, you can, or if you have a calculator, you might want to follow these same steps too. So I'm gonna open that first really quick before we get into the notes. It's a little blurry, but hopefully you can see which buttons I'm using. So the first thing I'm gonna do in the calculator is click this mode button. It's right next to the blue second button. After you click mode, see where it says angle and the radian is highlighted? We're using degrees today, so you're just gonna switch that to degree, otherwise you won't get the same answers as me. So after you've switched it to degree, you should be good to go. And I know it looks a little ridiculous because I'm using the app on my iPad, but that's because I'm filming with my phone, so I had to do that. Now I'm just gonna turn the light on here real quick and we'll get right into it. So if you know the sine, cosine, and tangent ratio of an angle, you can then use the inverse of the ratio, which just means sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tangent inverse to find the measure of the angle. So these are the inverse trig functions. They're another button on the calculator, which is why I have that pulled up today, because I don't think your standard phone calculator has those buttons on it. And then these are our rules for our inverse trig functions. So if sine of theta equals x, then theta is equal to inverse sine of x. And then same thing, cosine theta equals x, theta equals cosine inverse of x. And then finally, tangent theta equals x, then theta equals tangent inverse of x. So we're just kind of switching them around and using a different button, and it'll give us our angle measure for each of our angles that we're trying to find. So we're going to start here with example 1. I'm going to zoom in a little bit today. We've got 8 on the bottom here, 14 on the side here, and theta on the top here. So theta is the angle we're trying to figure out. We don't know our hypotenuse, but we do know our opposite and our adjacent. So we're going to use tangent here. So tangent theta equals opposite over adjacent. So 8 over 14. And then I'm going to follow my rule from earlier, right over here. And we'll have theta equals tangent inverse of 8 over 14. Now this is where the calculator comes into play. So I'm going to pull that out again. And I might turn off the light just so you can see what I'm typing. Sorry, this video is kind of a lot. So just so you can see what I'm typing, I'm gonna write exactly what I have written down on the paper right here. So tangent inverse, to get that button, I'm gonna click this blue second button, click. And then if you'll see on the tan button, it says tan -1 in the top corner. So I'm gonna click that, that's tangent inverse. And then we're just gonna have 8 divided by 14 in our parentheses. And I'm gonna zoom in just so that you can see that, hopefully a little bit clearer. It's not great, but we're trying. And then enter, and see, my angle measures 29.7 degrees. So that is going to be my answer. Our theta equals 29.7 degrees. So that is how you find missing angle measures. You're going to use the inverse trig functions on your calculator. Now I think this app is pretty dang good. It looks pretty similar to our calculators that we used in class. If you have a graphing calculator at home, you can also use that and it should work fine. Just make sure you switch your mode to degrees or you won't have the same answer as me. And then I'm going to go ahead and do example 2. Since we did example 1 using the calculator, I'm just going to kind of do example 2 and let you know what I got. It's kind of awkward to pull the calculator out every time. And if you're not all right with that, you can always email me and I will give you more in-depth calculator instructions and try and help you out there. So example 2, we've got a theta in our bottom corner. We know the hypotenuse and one of the legs. And that's going to be our adjacent leg, because opposite is that one on the top there. So adjacent and hypotenuse, that means we're going to use cosine. So cosine theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And then we're going to use our rule. So theta equals cosine inverse of 11 over 48. And whenever I typed that into my calculator, I got theta equals 76.8 degrees. And that's it. And then this part here, that's what you type into the calculator. Remember that. And you can get to the inverse trig functions just by typing the second button first, and then whichever trig function you wanted to use. So for example 2, we would just hit the cosine button and it would pull up that cosine inverse. And then finally, example 3, we've got theta, right angle, 1722. We know our hypotenuse, we know one of our legs, and that leg happens to be the opposite leg. So opposite and hypotenuse, that must be sine. Sine of theta equals opposite, 17, over hypotenuse, 22. And then I'm just going to use my inverse trig function again, but for sine. So we get theta equals sine inverse of 17 over 22. And remember, this is the bit that you type into your calculator. And then when I typed that in, I got 50.6 degrees for the measure of that angle of theta. If you have any questions, make sure to email me or comment on this video. Please fill in the Google form so that I know you did in fact watch the video. On Friday, we'll have an assignment going over this topic, and then next week we'll start fresh. I hope you have enjoyed learning some trig. We'll probably practice a couple more of our topics that we learned for our days next week. And just remember, I'm always here to help you. I'm pretty good at answering all my emails and reminds. Just don't be afraid to ask for help if you are struggling. I hope you have a great day, and yeah, that's it.